Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robyn Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
Good afternoon. It's 12:05 here on CJD 800. My name is Robyn Flynn. This is Under One Roof MTL with you until 1 p.m. right here on CJD 800. I am joined in studio by the heart and soul of Under One Roof MTL. Fred and Martin Mortgages, LJ Realties. Under One Roof MTL would not be Under One Roof MTL without you guys. Fred Pichette, Martin Spalding, LJ Aguinaga. How's it going, guys?
It's going great. Thank you so much for asking.
Beautiful, snowy, typical Montreal winter day, but I'm not bothered at all because I got parking right out front. That is like winning the lottery. I need to go buy, it's 6:49 right now. I feel like it doesn't get any better than this. How's your weekend? Did you guys watch the Super Bowl last weekend, by the way? We didn't get to our picks. Let's just say we all said Kansas City was going to win in overtime, and we were right.
Not really, but
I think we made some money on that, though.
Yeah, I think Fred might owe us a coffee or a dollar.
I guess.
I think Fred went rogue on us, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to give him a little edge, but you know. Let's start off with our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Visit their store at Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person who texts in the correct response to 514-800 is going to receive delicious Felix and Norton cookies delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, what does HELOC stand for? HELOC, HELOC. What does that stand for? Text us if you think you know the answer, 514-800. Make sure you include your first name in your text as well, because we want to make sure we're shouting out the right person. We'll have the answer for you before 1 p.m. If at any point you have any questions for Fred, Martin, or LJ, you can give us a call at 514-790-0800. Anything to do with mortgages, real estate, housing, rentals, home inspect, whatever it has to do with your house, we will do our best to get to it. I saw an interesting TikTok before I dive into what was in the news this week. Yesterday, I saw a TikTok from a guy who lives in Vancouver, which is notoriously one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. And he was trying to figure out if it would be cheaper for him to permanently relocate to an all-inclusive in a tropical destination than continue to pay rent and utilities in Vancouver. He works remote, so he can work anywhere in the world as long as he has Wi-Fi. And what he found was that he could go live at a 4-star resort in Mexico for less than what he was paying for rent and utilities in Vancouver. How crazy is that you can go live a life of luxury rather than just like rent some downtown apartment in Canada?
Well, it's funny. As I look outside, that's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. No kidding, right? I mean, I guess it would get old eventually, like going to the buffet every day and
So change resorts.
yeah, just always rotate. Yeah, I guess if you don't have a ton of stuff to put into storage, if you're happy just living out of a suitcase, being a nomad for the rest of your life. But that to me is just indicative of where we're at with the real estate market right now, right? That prices are, for rentals in particular, have become so unaffordable. But apparently the way we park our cars is to blame
Good segue.
for the housing crisis, which is insane to me. So I saw the story in the news this week. Does anybody want to just sort of explain what the story was before we dive into our opinions on it?
Well, I've got a different angle on it. So someone explain it, and I'll take the different angle on this story.
Okay, I could try to explain it well to you guys.
Do it, Fred.
Well, actually, it's not a mystery that we have a big housing deficit across the country, and obviously we need more affordable housing, especially in Montreal. Again, the developer are forced to build with a minimum parking regulation, and that costs a lot more money. At the end, it impacts really the affordability, which is now the question is, as a society, what we have to really do in terms of building. Like, should we start building without parking, or?
I feel like that will really anger CJD 800 listeners. I mean, everybody wants more parking. There's not enough parking. It's always about parking. But
Well, what was the first thing you said? You don't care what's going on outside because as soon as you got here, you found parking.
yeah, exactly.
Right?
It made
So
my day.
When I saw that article, the first thing that came to mind, let's face it, North America is a car culture, especially the United States. Second thing that came to mind, Canada is a vast country and it's mainly interconnected by roads. If we had Europe's rail system, I'd happily give up my car, but we don't. Answer me this question. Why don't we have a high-speed rail system between Quebec, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto? We don't. And so, it's always the same thing. These articles come out, and there's another article that's on a different road, we'll call it. I don't know if you guys caught this, but Stephen Guilbeault said last Monday that the federal government will stop investing in new road construction and infrastructure. He was lambasted by that comment by the Conservatives.
Of course.
And even Doug Ford stepped in and he goes, whether the federal government gives us a dime or not in Ontario, we're going to continue building roads. Are there too many roads on the car? Are there too many cars on the road? Absolutely.
Yes.
But where's the viable plan B? So if you're going to tell me you're going to get rid of all the parking spaces and build low-income housing on all the parking in Montreal, and that's going to solve the problem, I think that it's misguided.
Fair.
But Martin, I have a question. What would you say to the young generation who doesn't want to live in the countryside and they want to live in Montreal? I take an example. One of my sons, he want to live in the Milands. The other one wants to live downtown because he loves it. They can't afford to purchase
Well, you know what's funny? Whenever
property.
I go to a big capital, I tend to walk everywhere.
Yep.
But in my own city, I drive everywhere.
Which is interesting because Montreal is actually an extremely accessible city when you're using public transit. Before I bought my house on the South Shore, I lived in NDG for 10 years and then St. Henry for 5 years. And I didn't own a car. I had a license, but I took the bus and metro everywhere. And if ever I was going somewhere that wasn't accessible, I would take an Uber. You know, it was super easy to get around. I had no issues whatsoever. Once I moved to the South Shore, though, I don't know if you've ever tried to take a bus on the South Shore. Good luck. It'll tell you there's a bus coming. They're already only coming every 30 to 40 minutes, and then they just don't show up. Like, how do you plan your life around maybe a bus might show up? And that bus, my Chateauguay bus pass would cost me $185 a month. I mean, how much would you spend on gas? You know, like, it's not a huge difference.
So get rid of all the parking, but build the infrastructure in parallel so people can get around without their cars.
LJ?
We can also rotate it to building the parking kind of vertically stacked. And in Montreal, we've actually done a great job of getting rid of a lot of these parking lots and building more housing on them. We've seen that trend over the last 6-7 years, downtown specifically.
But is it the right kind of housing?
Expensive condos bought up by
parking
foreign
lots
investors.
Downtown, and it's 1,000 a square foot for
It wasn't that when they
500
started. When these places were built, they were going for about 500. Now, obviously, over the time and over the increases we've been seeing in the market, we have gotten to 1,000, 1,100 a square foot.
Speaking of the market, we should make sure we squeeze in our real estate market update before we go to traffic. LJ?
So in January, we saw total sales up on the island 8% and 18% up in the greater Montreal area. Active listings was up 13% and 16% respectively on island versus the greater Montreal. What I found particularly interesting was that home prices were up 17%, and this is all compared to January 2023, so Jan 2024 versus 2023. And condo prices, were up 8%. The time of market is up. We've seen it go up significantly. Right now, depending on the type of property it is, whether it's a condo, house, or multiplex, it's somewhere between 85 to 92 days. All of this being said, the market's moving. People are out there. People are making offers. My team alone, we had 9 accepted offers so far this month, and we're just about halfway through the month right now. So things are definitely happening. What are you seeing out there, Fred?
I think, LJ, you're absolutely right. Martin and I, we have been working, especially the last 2-3 weeks, on purchase. That's something that has been a while I haven't seen. Like November, December, it was so quiet on purchase. And now it seems that really the market kicks in, and people had decided to look at different way that, okay, the interest rate, it is what it is, but it's time to purchase.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robyn Flynn with Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages, LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. After traffic, we're going to check in with Scotia Mcleod Wealth Manager Arnie Zwaig to find out whether you should be using your RRSP, TFSA, or FHSA to buy your first home.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robyn Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. Mortgage broker. A mortgage broker is a licensed professional who helps borrowers find suitable mortgage products from various lenders. For example, a buyer should consult a mortgage broker to explore different loan options and secure the best deal before they begin shopping for houses. This has been your lingo lexicon. RRSPs, TFSAs, FHSAs, oh my! There are a plethora of different accounts and they can all help you purchase your first home. So, which account makes the most sense for you? And how can you take advantage of their benefits as a first-time home buyer? Arnie Zwaig is Portfolio Manager and Senior Wealth Advisor at Scotia Mcleod, and he joins us now. Hey, Arnie, how are you?
I'm great, Robyn. How are you?
Fantastic. So glad you're here. So first of all, let's just explain what those three main accounts are, what the acronyms stand for, and how they work. So what's an RRSP, TFSA, TFSA, and FHSA?
It sounds like a tremendous alphabet soup we have going here. But so look, many Canadians have heard of RSPs and TFSAs, but as a reminder, a registered retirement savings plan is a tax advantage plan where you receive a tax refund for your contributions, and the investments that you hold within, the rate of return on those investments are gathered in a tax-deferred environment. When you withdraw the money later in life, that's when you're taxed, except when you borrow money from your account for a down payment through the home buyer's plan. And that acts as an interest-free loan for your RSP that your RSP makes to you. Now, a tax-free savings account is designed to be used for any savings, short, medium, long-term goals, not only for retirement. The contributions are made with after-tax dollars. And many people use this as an emergency fund or for a down payment, really because when you take the money out with the growth, there is no tax implication. Now, as a result of the 2022 federal budget, this new plan that you mentioned, the First Home Savings Account, FHSA, is for qualified investors who are able to contribute up to $40,000 for your first home tax-free. And this is a great account. It allows Canadians who are at least 18 to contribute up to $40,000 over, a maximum of $8,000 per year into the account. And there are some restrictions. There's always a but. You have to use these funds within 15 years of opening the account or before you turn 71, whichever is earlier. And then the really cool thing is that this new account is such a great savings vehicle for home buying goals because it combines both the power of the RSP and TFSA. Your contributions are tax deductible, and any qualifying withdrawals from the account are tax free. So it means the money you put in, earn in this account towards the down payment in a tax free environment. It's just a great tool.
Cool. LJ?
As a first-time home buyer, which account makes the most sense when you're saving for your down payment?
So, look, the truth of the matter is that everybody has their own goals and their own realities. But if you can afford, and if you really have as a midterm goal, let's say 5+ years, that you're going to buy a home, I'd say your first home savings account is the first place you park the money. You put in up to $40,000. I'm saying you can contribute up to $8,000 each year, and that would take you 5 years. But if it's a longer term goal and you only have $4,000 or $300 a month that you can contribute, this is just a good account to start using. But everything, LJ and Robyn, it's all about planning. You have to have a vision, a plan, and once you have the plan, you move towards it.
That makes sense.
As a follow-up to that quickly, what if you're not a first-time home buyer? Can you still use these accounts to purchase secondary property?
Not for secondary property. Look, the criteria is this. You need to be a resident of Canada. You have to be at least 18 years old. And you or your a spouse cannot have owned a home in which you live at any time in the year the account is open or the 4 previous calendar years. So if you had bought your first home, for instance, in 2015, you sold it in 2018, and you've been renting or living in a tent or with your parents or wherever, you would now be considered again a first-time home buyer for this program. So you can buy, sell, wait 4+ years and do it again. Take advantage of this program.
So I'm going to try to avoid going through the acronyms because I know I'm going to get ripped up. But my question are these programs stackable? And how would you leverage one against the other to maximize their benefit?
So, like I said, everybody's tax situation, financial goals are different, Martin. But if your goal is really to buy a home and you don't know how you're going to save for the down payment, the strategy where you would use all three tools that we mentioned would really work well. So for easy math, okay, let's assume that you're in a 50% tax bracket. I know that most of our listeners aren't, but just for easy math, we'll use this example. So if you're in a 50% tax bracket and you put the maximum $8,000 into I'll use the acronym FHSA, you would then expect a $4,000 tax refund. Then you should take the $4,000 and make an RSP contribution, and then you would expect a $2,000 refund. And you take that $2,000 and put it into a tax-free account. And so what you would benefit from, Martin, is the benefit of compounding all those investments. So for an $8,000 contribution to the FHSA, you'll have $14,000 working for you. But, and like I said, I used the 50% number for easy math on the radio, but really you should talk to your tax expert so that you find out what your numbers truly are.
I know the deadlines are coming up for contributions for this year. Arnie, what are the deadlines and how quickly do people need to act to benefit this year?
So for an RSP, because it's a leap year, your RSP contribution has to be done by the 29th of February. So you have, almost a couple weeks left, let's say. But there are 10 days left. But the truth is that this, for the FHSA, you're at the beginning of the year. You have no deadline right now to butt your head up against. So that's not a consideration as far as I'm concerned.
You mentioned when you were speaking about the criteria for FHSA that you need to use those funds within 15 years. What if you've started that account, you have some savings, but you're not yet in a position to actually purchase your first home within those 15 years? What happens to that money?
Well, so assume the 15th year comes and goes. Yeah, you have X dollars saved up in the account. You've made your contributions. You've earned some rate of return, but now you're still not ready to buy. Well, you can transfer that money into your RRSP. So it's not so it is quite flexible. They really, when they created this, they wanted this to be a user-friendly plan that would be helpful to people. And the idea that not everybody is going to succeed in home ownership really gives this ability to move it into an RSP, and you don't lose the compounding effect. You don't lose the tax deductions that you had already written off your taxes many years in the past.
Perfect. Martin, I know you had a really specific question.
I promise we already got the answer, but I'm going to ask the question again because I promised I would ask this question. So a colleague of mine has two sons about to finish university. The colleague paid for their university education, so they have no debt coming out. They have made a little bit of money, and both want to purchase houses. So if I understand properly, the best program for them to start saving for a first-time purchase is
the FHSA. What's behind door number one?
Now we're going to cut this segment out and send it directly to him.
Perfect. And if he needs me to back him up, just give him my number.
Perfect. We will.
Arnie Zwaig, Portfolio Manager and Senior Wealth Advisor at Scotia Mcleod. How can people reach you, Arnie?
Well, my office number is 514-287-3684. and you can find my website at zwaig.ca.
That's ZWAIG. Thank you so much for your time today, Arnie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robyn Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties. This is the Mortgage Minute.
What's the difference between an insured mortgage and a conventional mortgage? This is your Mortgage Minute. All right, so when you're looking at mortgages in Canada, you've got two main types: insurable mortgages and conventional mortgages. The big difference between them is how much you're putting down, whether you'll need to tack on default insurance from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, Genworth, or Canada Guarantee. If you're putting down less than 20% of the home's purchase price, you're looking at an insurable mortgage. This means you'll need to buy mortgage default insurance, which protects the lender if you don't pay. It's a good option if you can't afford a down payment because it lets you buy a home with as little as 5% down. But remember, there are rules about the property price and how long you can take to pay it back, maxing out at 25 years. On the flip side, if you can swing a down payment of 20% or more, you're in conventional mortgage territory. This route means you can skip the extra insurance. Plus, you get better loan terms, like a longer period to pay off the mortgage. It's more upfront, but could be cheaper in the long run.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. My name is Robyn Flynn. I am with Fred and Martin, Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages, and LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. Guys, 50% of Canadians are saying that high interest rates are negatively impacting their love lives right now. And this is so interesting because Fred and I were just talking about this before the show. My husband and I haven't had a date night without our daughter in a year. Because when you think about, babysitter, $15 an hour. If you want to go just for dinner and a movie, that's a minimum of 4 hours for the sitter. Then you're going to spend $100 on dinner at least. If you go to, I don't drink, so at least our bill's a little bit lower because of that. Then you're going to a movie. If you're seeing it in, 3D or IMAX or whatever, your tickets are $20 a pop. If you get popcorn, forget about it. A night out, a decent date night is $250, $300. I mean, we could just stay home and I can cook us a nice meal and we'll watch something on Netflix that costs us nothing, So I think a lot of Canadians are choosing to stay home right now. Is it because of the high interest rates?
It's definitely having an impact on it.
Hang on a sec, LJ. We'll get your mic on.
I said it's definitely having an impact on it for sure. We're seeing times are tough. People are definitely constrained. Anybody who was on a variable payment mortgage as well is obviously seeing those numbers goes up significantly. And thus people are making decisions to kind of have the right impact on their life moving forward right now.
It's absolutely true, LG, what you're saying, because yesterday morning I had a call with a client as he was telling me exactly the same thing. He says, Fred, I'm on variable. Times are hard and I'm struggling. Do you think I should refi now to have a bit of breathing air? And, I think it's now if we say that it's impacting your love life, are we going to start blaming Bank of Canada
for the divorce rate increasing all of a sudden? I don't know. I feel like we now need to include Dr. Lori Bettito in Under One Roof, right? How to keep your marriage alive when there are high interest rates.
Well, this survey came out in time for Valentine's Day, obviously, but it also went further where it said 24% said they aren't traveling. 17% said they're not going out. And I was telling the group a story. I went out last Tuesday at a Monkland eatery and had a burger and fries. And I rarely look at the check, but I got into my car and I said, I wonder how much that burger and fries cost me. And I looked at the check and it was $35 for a burger and fries. It was a good burger and fries, but it was still $35 for a burger and fries. And then you were talking about Netflix. 11% said they've started canceling their streaming services. And then the final stat in this survey saying that almost half of Canadians, 45%, are prioritizing home ownership over being in love. Ouch.
Wow. But you know what? Having a partner, though, makes it easier to pay the bills, assuming you're both working, or even if one parent is staying home with the child, that saves on childcare expenses. it's a lot easier for me to pay my mortgage when I'm only paying half the mortgage, right? My husband's taking care of the other half.
It's almost necessary these days.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Absolutely.
2 incomes, 3 incomes, 4 incomes.
A lot of people now are getting together with their friends. If you're not in a relationship and you still want to buy a home, why not do it with your best friend of 25 years? That's a solid relationship.
Oh, we had a client this week, sorry. And it was husband, wife, and the 2 daughters. Everyone's working. Everyone's living under one roof, MTL. And all of them are being qualified for one mortgage.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 people.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I think it's a bit sad that you need 4 people to qualify for
4
a mortgage.
incomes.
4 incomes. It's the rules. Honestly, I think they have to slowly change a little bit.
Like get a little bit easier? You wouldn't be worried about people
well,
defaulting?
I guess the stress test doesn't really help with an interest rate at 5%, qualifying people at 7%. It's hard,
I've heard a lot of mortgage breakers ask for a longer amortization period.
Longer
Yes.
than 30 years?
Longer than 30 years. I mean, we used to be back in the day 45 years, 40 years, etc. So bringing it
Wow.
back somewhat closer to that, which will lower the monthly impact, obviously, increase the qualification
But I hate
amount.
the but you'll never pay that thing off.
Yeah, but Martin, you need to.
35, 40 years. I mean, it's just like paying rent at that point.
You're
'Cause
still
think of
building
the
the equity.
interest. I know, but think of the interest you're paying over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what's the solution? You keep renting for all your life?
I'm just creating a debate here. So
Speaking of debates, if ever you have any questions or comments, you can always call us at 514-790-0800, or you can text us at 514-800. Do include your name if you can, by the way, because we like to be able to say who the messages are coming from. This text does not have a name, so I'm going to name you Nancy. Nancy says, when you make a rule change for a condo that all condos can't be rented out, do you have to register this rule with the government or another agency? LJ, what's the answer to that?
So as long as the condo board had a meeting, you had quorum, you had enough people present to make this decision, the vote was held, everything's registered, you just update the bylaws of the immovable. There's no requirement to have a new formal modification to the declaration of co-ownership. It's not that deep. It can be simply in the bylaws of the immovable following that meeting.
That seems like a crazy rule for a whole condo building that no one's allowed to rent out any condo unit.
It's because it's short term is what they're really addressing.
Airbnb.
They don't want the whole thing to turn into an Airbnb.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Most buildings have a minimum 12-month rental term. Some are 6-month minimum rental term. They don't want the turnover. They want to know who the people in the building are. They want that familiarity, and they want to feel comfortable in their own space.
Yeah, I get that. Especially condos tend to have a lot of shared spaces. When I used to live in a condo with my husband, we had like a terrace that was for everybody. It had like barbecues and an herb garden and tables and whatever. It was quite
Fancy.
nice, actually.
Fancy.
Very, very nice. And in St.
Fancy.
Henry, the herb garden was the best part. I'd be out there barbecuing and I'd be picking off some fresh rosemary to throw on my steak right on the grill. It was top
It all
notch.
depends on what kind of herb you're growing.
But,
It's all legal.
It was nice to know everybody that was out there. You can hang out and be relaxed. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. That's Fred, that's Martin, that's LJ. I am Robyn. Coming up, our property of the week, plus the answer to our trivia question and the winner of some delicious Felix and Norton cookies.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robyn Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
You are listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robyn Flynn with LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties, Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. If you have any questions pertaining to mortgages, real estate, housing, you can always call us at 514-790-0800, or you can text us at 514-800. Do text us if you think you know the answer to our trivia question, by the way. We will have the answer to that before 1 p.m. Our question this week, what does HELOC stand for? If you think you know the answer, 514-800, and do include your first name in your answer. Guys, we have a ton of questions coming in, so we're going to get to them in just a sec. But first, LJ, why don't we talk about our property of the week?
So this week I'm highlighting 2050 Avenue de l'Église in Villemard. This is a tastefully renovated corner unit that features 2 bedrooms with an indoor parking and a huge storage locker next to that parking. The unit is 943 square feet with a closed 200 square foot master bedroom that also features a walk-in closet. My favorite coffee shop in that area is Yo & Co. Espresso Bar. It's a cute little local joint. And then you can't go wrong with a meal at McKiernan's.
Oh, I love McKiernan's. I love that LJ always sneaks in that food reference every week.
I'm after your hearts.
Oh,
But the listing of the week comes with parking.
ooh. Controversial. Guys, we have a few comments that have come into some stuff that we've been talking about. Drew says, if a 40 or 45-year mortgage allowed me to buy a home, which I cannot do right now, I would absolutely consider it. Sure, it's like paying rent, but at least you own the property and you can do what you like.
You have the upside of the equity.
Yeah, we had a
That
good
too.
debate when we went to spots, and I stand corrected. I'm always in favor of buying,
Yes.
no matter what, even if you're paying more interest over the length of your mortgage. It's your property. You build equity. You build wealth.
Well, and even just, I don't think people realize, especially if you're far removed from renting, all of the restrictions that come with being a tenant. You know, a lot of the time you're not allowed to paint. So you're living in this white, sterile environment. You're not allowed to even hang stuff up because they don't want you putting holes in the walls. You don't have any artwork around you. You're not allowed pets. You can't have a cat, a dog. There can be noise complaints if you have children and you're in an upper unit. You got people, cranky old lady downstairs complaining about the footprints, you know? So there's a lot of issues that can come with being a tenant. We have a really great question that just came in at 514-800. How does modifying an existing home into a multi-generational home affect its future resale value? That's becoming more and more common, right? Those like mother-in-law units in the basement where you're adding a full apartment with a kitchen and a full bath. Does that impact the value of the home?
So generally speaking, it will impact the value, usually in a positive sense, unless it's really not liked by that neighborhood. But overall, if you're adding an extra kitchen, you have a bathroom down there, it's almost like a mini duplex, right? It's got still one lot, it's one address for everybody else, and you have usually connection from the upstairs to the downstairs, like the mother-in-law suite that you mentioned. But you're adding value by adding an additional kitchen to the space, as long as you haven't started removing too many bedrooms, because obviously bedrooms versus kitchen is going to play a bit of a weighted average here.
You're basically converting it into a potential income property. So the person who purchases that property can rent out the basement and pay off some of their mortgage.
Of course, but I think what I saw most of the time is people want to take care of their parents. And that's why they want to have that extra
That's why they're
apartment.
called intergenerational homes. That was
Right.
definitely the original reasoning behind it, or even just to have your parents close by if you want help with your kids, babysitting, etc. But I've also seen a client do it in Longueuil where
Like
they...
that, Robyn could go out more often with your husband.
Yeah, exactly. My dad lives around the corner, but the difference is that I have very young parents. My parents are not retired. They're working still. So yeah, my dad in theory can babysit, but like he works all week. He's tired on the weekends. He doesn't necessarily want to chase after a 2-year-old, you know?
What's worth, what you have to look at is actually the use that you're making of your house. So how many rooms are you actually using in your house? And if you've got dead space and you can create an apartment which creates revenue for you, why not?
Absolutely. Love that idea. Somebody else texted in at 514-800. I know times are hard. Back in the 80s, interest was near 20%. And okay, old man raising fist at cloud, like in The Simpsons, you know, like, yeah, interest rates were 20%, but your house cost you $50,000. Like, I'll still take 20% interest on a $50,000 house over 6-7% on an $800,000 house, right? Like, I feel like by every metric, it is way more difficult to purchase a home in 2024 than it was in the 80s. Am I crazy by saying that?
I think it was probably a
Sorry,
much more
Aldi, go ahead.
difficult pill to swallow. Seeing that 20%, seeing that 1/5 of the property value you're paying interest annually is a very hard pill to swallow. And again, wages weren't what they are today. Obviously, the spread is nowhere near the same as the growth we've seen in pricing for properties. But nevertheless, to assume that you can take in 5 years, you're going to have doubled the price of the property simply in interest is a crazy thought.
Yeah, I guess so.
And my favorite expression is not trying to time the market, it's time in the market. So if you're at a time where interest rates are 20%, shouldn't stop you from getting into the market, because time in the market is where you're going to build equity.
Absolutely. Speaking of equity, maybe we should get to the answer for our trivia question of the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to our question at 514-800 was Jeff. What does HELOC stand for? The answer, home equity line of credit. So congratulations, Jeff. Check your phone because I did just text you. We need some details from you so we can get those cookies to your doorstep. Guys, we learned a lot this week on Under One Roof MTL. Get creative to keep your marriage alive, even as interest rates increase. Your car is probably the reason you can't afford a house. And
Used to be avocados.
and putting down more money up front when you're buying a house will probably save you money in the long term. Is that fair to say? That's based on our mortgage minute this week, right?
So that's a true statement. However, getting into the market is even more important than staying on the sidelines for an additional 5 years to save up that 20%.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I encourage people to having a plan up front, not at the last minute say, I want to buy a property. That's something that you could plan in advance.
And the best way to plan it in advance is to meet with a mortgage broker like Fred, like Martin at Fred and Martin. Chat with them. Chat about your options. Should you buy now with a 5% down payment, or should you wait and save for a few years until you have 20% down?
And actually, Arnie gave us some really good advice as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to go through the acronyms because I'm going to butcher them. But the 3 programs that we discussed during Arnie's segment, you should leverage those.
The TFSA, FHSA, and your RRSPs. Just showing off over here.
Yeah.
Fred, Martin, where can people reach you if they want more information?
All right. So if you're a first-time home buyer, you're self-employed, you have less than stellar credit, you're an investor, you're busy, look for us, fredandmartin.com.
Best way to reach you guys. LJ?
So you can start off with my website, ljrealties.com. If you're thinking of buying, selling, or investing, feel free to call or text me at 514-500-4040. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and X. My handle is LJ Aguinaga. Or for more information on our listings and my real estate team under the handle LJ Realties.
And if you're looking for someone to run your social media or produce a podcast for you, you can learn more about the digital marketing services that I offer at my website, robynflynn.com. That's pretty much it for us for this week. A reminder, though, that Under One Roof MTL can be heard live every Sunday at noon right here on CJD 800 after the trivia show. To learn more about us and the show, you can visit us on social media. Under One Roof MTL is on Instagram and Facebook. You can direct all your mortgage and real estate questions to info@underoneroofmtl.com. I see we are still getting questions in at 514-800. So if you want to get answers to those questions, make sure you tune in next week. We'll be sure to include the answers to those questions. If you want to email us, though, you can send us voice memos so we can actually play your question on the air. We love to hear your voices. You get to hear our voices. We should be able to hear your voices, right? Exactly. Fair is fair. In the meantime, do reach out to Fred and Martin and LJ individually for all of your real estate and housing needs. Martin?
And we are working on a landing page, and it will be ready this week.
And that landing page website, underoneroofmtl.com. What's going on, Martin? Is that your parking?
That is my parking.
That's our cue to wrap it up. Martin's got to go before he gets a parking ticket. Our thanks to Dario and Master Control for producing the show today. We'll see you next week at noon.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robyn Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.